Welcome to the Circuito do Algarve here in Portimao in the south of Portugal for the second round of the 2012 International GT Open. Today is the 50-minute race after we had the longer 70-minute race yesterday, but we have still got the mandatory pit stops, the driver changes that we have come to expect and enjoy from the International GT Open. In the commentary box today, it's myself, Ben Evans, and alongside me, Le Mans Series racer James Walker. And James, it's a full grid we've got here this weekend in what is proving to be a very tricky weekend weather-wise. We've had showers all morning here in Portugal. The race has been declared a wet start, but the track beginning to dry out.
Yes, hi Ben, great to be here again. Yeah, you summed up really. You can see from the pictures here how tricky the track conditions look. We had it all day yesterday with qualifying and race one, and it looks like it's carried over to race two. The teams and the cars outside our commentary box window, as we see now, the teams can't quite decide which tyre to go to. The track in front of us here, the pit straight, looks like it's actually starting to dry up on the tabletop of the pit straight here at Algarve, but some of the other dips of the track you could see from the earlier races are holding quite a bit of standing water, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next 5 minutes or so.
Well, on pole position, we've got the Portimao Racing Aston Martin of Matteo Malucelli, who has managed to put that car on pole in second place on the grid. In the GTS class car is Peter Cox, the vastly experienced Dutchman, who was in very, very fine form in qualifying yesterday morning when we had the session which set the grid for this race. Two classes are ever in the International GT Open, the Super GTs and the GTS cars. You would expect the Super GTs to be about 1.5 seconds a lap faster, which makes Peter Cox's performance to claim second on the grid all the more remarkable as the countdown begins. The grid starting to clear, with then in third place Federico Leo in the number 4. And of course Ferrari, and Federico Leo, who was at the head of the field for much of yesterday's race. Tony Velander putting that car on pole for the first race. They were well positioned when a gearbox failure put them out, so Federico Leo looking to make amends for that this afternoon. Huge field. It will be a rolling start, and from what we can see on the grid, there's a number of teams making last-minute tyre changes, James. Yeah,
as you can see, a few of the cars in front of us are making the switch to slicks. You can see them rushing around on the grid now. But this is a really difficult point in the race, because this will really determine how the race pans out. All the cars, by the looks of it, came to the grid on the full wet tyre. But we can see a couple of teams in front of us, including the 61 Ford GT, have just made the switch to slicks.
Well, we're seeing on the grid there Alexander Taukanitsa Jr. fourth on the grid. Fantastic performance from the Belarusian driver, who was looking super in testing. Here is yesterday's race-winning car, Nick Tandy and Marco Holzer. It's Nick Tandy who starts the race. And if you didn't join us yesterday, well, we had a very tricky race which started in wet conditions behind the safety car. The track dried out and the teams had to make a switch mid-race for slick tyres. However, the regulations in the International GT Open says that you cannot refuel the car and change tyres in the same pit stop. The Tandy Holzer car was one of the cars that did. They got a drive-through penalty as a result, but it didn't cost them the lead. So it was Nick Tandy and Marco Holzer who came through to claim the victories. Here we have the formidable starting grid headed up by the Aston Martin of Matteo Malucelli. Andrea Montermini, 7th on the grid in the Ferrari 458. He was a disappointing late retirement yesterday with a puncture when he got collected by another car. We'll see how the former Formula 1 racer goes. Also a car to watch well up in the GTS class, Marco Mappelli in the Auto Orlando Sport Porsche. Nicky Kadai, 15th on the grid, yesterday's GTS class winner and third in the race overall for Kadai and his co-driver Stefano Bizzarri. Maiko Dalla Stella as well. He and Daniel Zampieri we can expect to go well in the GTS class. Johnny Molam in the Lotus Evora, the Super GT car, struggling for straight line pace, but the chassis looking good, and in these wet conditions that could play into his hands. Stephen Earle, the American orthopedic surgeon, starting down in 23rd position as still the grid keeps coming. The all-Swiss driver lineup, Ala Kalari and Iraj Alexander, there 28th on the grid. And then we move in some of the runners from the Spanish GT Championship with Rafael Unzurungaza rounding out the field in 35th position in the multicoloured Mosler. The grid is clearing and we are about to go off on the formation lap before we get the rolling start, and it will be the first side-by-side rolling start of the season for the International GT Open, because yesterday's race started behind the safety car in very, very wet conditions, and on the single file start when the safety car peeled in. Tony Villander was able to sprint into an early advantage. The crowd here enjoying a few fleeting moments of sunshine in Portimao, although looking out over the grandstand from our commentary position, we can see the clouds rolling in. The cars move off on their formation lap now, and this promises to be a very, very competitive race, James, because we saw in yesterday's race and also in yesterday's qualifying cars that we would expect to be a little bit higher up the order actually qualifying some way down the grid. So we'll look to see the likes of Patrick Pilet pushing up through the field in the IMSA Performance Matmut Porsche.
Yeah, the session yesterday in qualifying was very strange. We had a red flag in the first section of the session. And as soon as the green flag came out again, we saw Peter Cox do that fantastic lap, which at the time we didn't really take much notice of. But then it took a long time for anyone to beat it, and like we said, he only ended up dropping down to second place. But the big issue with these cars on the slick tyre, if they have made that switch, is this year, obviously, they're running a Dunlop for all the cars, and it's a slightly harder compound. It does take a bit of time to get a lot of temperature in it, and we saw yesterday in the qualifying sessions as well, quite a few people losing control of the car on the colder tyres. So if they have made the switch to slick tyres at this stage, they've really got to try and work, as we can see a dry line now down to turn 5.
Yeah, the slick tyres taking about 5 or 6 laps to get up to temperature for a flying lap, so we could see some interesting action in the early stages. Peter Cox yesterday didn't get to race because his co-driver Nico Pronk unfortunately discovered that Lamborghinis and Armco don't go together very well on the first lap of the race, rotating into the Armco barrier, putting that car out. The car's now on their formation lap, and we have got more or less a dry line emerging on the circuit. We are live on www.live.gtopen.net, so if you're watching this race deferred some hours after the race finished, then next time around at the Nürburgring, do join us on www.live.gtopen.net. If you are watching us on the live stream, then we have got the live track function enabled. You just need to log in through Facebook, and any questions that you have for James and myself, then please pose them during the race. Likewise, we're on Twitter as well, @JamesWalker_ and @BenCommentator. So any questions that you have, we will be doing our very best to answer them during the course of what will be a frantic 50 minutes of action here at this wonderful Portimao circuit. It's about 20 minutes drive away from the centre of Portimao and the beautiful marina there up into the hills, which has given us a fantastic setting for a circuit that the drivers absolutely love. You couldn't think of a finer place really to start the 2012 season. So the car's now on the formation lap, just trying to get some heat into them, and we are very shortly going to be going racing here for 50 minutes of International GT Open action. They come down through the hairpin at turn 14, and then the action should be getting underway. Some of the cars towards the rear of the field not quite forming up, so the pace is really slowed now by the pace car. They form up Noah's Ark style 2 by 2, getting ready for the off here. It will then be the responsibility of Matteo Malucelli, the 2005 Italian GT champion, to pace the field through to the start of the race. We watch the number 10 car there, Miguel Ramos. He and Raffaele Gianmaria won here at Portimao last year. They were very competitive yesterday. Will they be able to stand on the top step of the podium today? Peeling into the pit lane for a tyre change, that's Michael Broznicki, who peels in the Ferrari 458. So Broznicki, yesterday's runner-up, into the pits. He is going to make a tyre change. The red lights are on. We're about to go racing here at Portimao. The field come up over the crest. It's rolling thunder down to the start line. The lights go out, and away we go here. The green light is on the field. Fans out, so they surge down towards turn 1 for the first time of asking. And is it going to be the Aston Martin, the black car to your left of your screen, that's going to maintain the lead here from Peter Cox? I think it is. So it's Malucelli who leads it from Cox, and then also well up is Patrick Piera in the Good Sense Racing Lamborghini Gallardo. But now Cox has come through. He's taken the lead around the outside of turn 1 into turn 2. Leads Peter Cox, with then the Good Sense Racing Lamborghini also well up and challenging for second. And Patrick Piera is going to go through here, or is he? Because challenging back is Malucelli as Patrick Piet looks to the outside of Alexander Taufnitzer Jr., and I think he's able to make that move stick, as pulling away already is Peter Cox from Piera in second, Malucelli in third, Nick Tandy fourth, and then everybody else squabbling 3-4 abreast into the hairpin. That's going to get very tight. It's Lorenzo Bontempelli, the Italian dentist, out on the outside in the blue car, the Omerta car, who almost got squeezed out of contention. Also making a great start in the GTS car is Nicky Kadai. He is already surging past Alexander Taufnitzer Jr. towards the bottom of the top 10. The car's struggling for grip, and Tao Kanitsa is now coming under pressure as well around the outside from Michele Rugolo in the 57 machine. But James, look how little grip they've got.
Yeah, you can see how much they're struggling, but we're hearing rumours from the pit lane now that Malucelli is on slick tyres, so that's going to explain why he's dropped back. So again, that change in difference in pace from Cox suggests that maybe Cox is still on the wet tyres. This is going to be crucial now to see how long Cox can stay out on that wet tyre and make the most of these early, maybe even a few laps on those wets before they start to chew themselves up.
That is a very good point, James. So the tyre strategy already coming to play in these early stages. So we could see some of the quicker cars slipping down through the order, but as the track comes to them, as they get some heat into those tyres, then they will be able to push. We've got a replay of the exit of the hairpin, and we have somebody who is going and exploring the scenery. I think that's possibly Johnny Mother in the Evora. It is. We've also got spinning along one of the Porsches, some way down the order, that one. So through comes Cox blasting along, and he's built out an enormous advantage on the first lap of the race, 2.7 seconds. And then if Malucelli is on those slick tyres, he's doing very well to hold them in third. He's coming under a little bit of pressure though from Nick Tandy in the Manthey Porsche. That's the fight for third and fourth. The bright yellow and green Porsche, you really wouldn't miss that on a dark night. And he is also being pressurised by Marco Mappelli in the Orlando Sport Porsche, and that is one of the GTS cars. So Mappelli quietly confident about that car's handling, with then Patrick Pilet right onto his tail, and Nicky Caddo as well up into 7th place.
Yeah, you can see now, as we see a bit of bodywork actually from the GT40 car on the pit straight in front of us. Tandy really is being slowed up by Malucelli now, so even irrelevant of what tyres he's on, he really has to try and get past him now, because you can see the leaders are disappearing off into the distance.
So we've got the Aston Martin being bullied by the Porsches, accelerating on through turn 6 into turn 7 and 8. And Malucelli having to be so precise with his racing line here. There is that sole dry line as Malucelli waits for the car to come to him, waits for those Dunlop slicks to warm up and give him the grip he needs. But at the moment, he's staying on the racing line. He's making it very difficult for the others to try and get past him. Not for want of trying, though, for Nick Tandy. So through turn 9 and then climbing up the hill towards turns 10 and 11. And Tandy again tries to put his nose up the inside of the road, then plunges downhill towards turn 12. And Tandy actually, by trying to find his way through, has now got Mappelli right onto his tail, then Patrick Piet and Nicky Caddo as well. And Mappelli looking very good in the Orlando Sport Porsche, and actually tried to draw alongside the Manthey Racing Porsche. They're in different classes, let's not forget. The GTS class car of Mappelli you would expect to be a second a lap slower, which begs the question actually, James, whether Nick Tandy might be on slicks as well. Yeah,
I was just going to say, looking at the pace of all those cars there in the shot, I think Tandy is on the wets, because he on the slicks, sorry, because if he'd been on the wets, he would have been trying to adventure onto the wet line to try and pass Malucelli. But you can see he's got a very good run as his wipers are going, a very good run onto the pit straight here.
And he's going to go through up into second position, past the Good Sense Racing Lamborghini Piera, or is he? Because Piera turns across, and on the wet part of the track, running well is Malucelli in third, and Tandy shoots through, claims third position. And that was maybe an experience there from Malucelli. He's about to possibly lose out as well to Mappelli. He looks up to the inside, he's squeezed offline again. And this is the problem, slick tyres, you run offline to try and make the overtake. No grip into turn run, runs wide, loses 2 places into the pits. We have got tyre changes aplenty from the AF Corsa squad as the rain starts to come down here in Portimao as well. So those out on slicks are struggling into the pits. We've got drivers, I think, who were on slicks. So Alexander Tao Kanitsa Jr. is one of them. Also Miguel Ramos as well in the number 10 Ferrari.
But I think what the actual issue, Ben, there is, I think teams are actually coming into the pit lane now to change to slicks just as the rain is starting to fall. So it couldn't have been a worse time for it. But you can actually see Tandy now he's cleared Malucelli, and Malucelli's been pushed. At the minute you get pushed offline, you never actually find your way back onto the dry circuit because there's always another car in the way. But he's just got to try now. You can see the rain starting to fall now, so these slick tyres are really, really going to go off very quick. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see him lose 10 or 15 seconds a lap on the wrong sort of tyre.
Now we might see Malucelli coming in, so we've got tyre changes aplenty. It's Federico Leo there in the number 4 car. The AF Corsa squad pulling in all their cars to make the tyre change, as still Piera maintains that second position with Tandy trying to close in onto his tail. Nick Tandy has got the wipers going. The former Porsche Super Cup runner, as cars now surging back out of the pits, but they've lost a lot of time. They're going to have to get this tyre call absolutely spot on as the rain continues to come down, because this could be one of those races where you're never on the right tyres, and so the driver's going to have to make best with what they've got. Also into the pit lane we have got the Kessel Racing car of Stephen Earl. So Earl rejoins the action again. A tyre change for him, and Tandy's got a good run here and is possibly going to be challenging for second as they sprint through, and this is to complete the third lap of the race. Peter Cox, by the way, is 10 seconds clear of the field already in the lead of the race as Tandy thinks about looking to the inside, down the hill into turn 1, and they're going to get catching into the traffic. Some of the cars emerging from the pits already the best part of the lap down, which makes things doubly difficult. It's one of the Audi R8s immediately ahead of them, and that is the Team Nova driver car, Mikko Escalainen, the Finnish driver in number 81, as now we have got a challenge from Marco Mappelli on Nick Tandy. So Mappelli is relishing these conditions. He draws alongside Tandy as they head out of turn 4, down the hill towards turn 5. And are we going to see Mappelli go through? Yes, we do. So Marco Mappelli in the GTS car moves up into third position as Mikko Escalainen squeezes the second place car, the Good Sense Racing Lamborghini Gallardo. Action everywhere you look in this race, and really the weather's just thrown the cat amongst the pigeons. And now going a lap down is Escalainen, who is going to have to keep his eyes on his mirrors, because as he moves aside, Mappelli looks to squeeze through, so does Nick Tandy. There's not enough room there. The Audi still remains to the outside of the circuit. We've got somebody else going very slowly, and these are very, very difficult conditions for the drivers, James.
Yeah, they are. You can see where the Audi there was kind of mixing up what everyone was doing, but just coming out of the pit lane. But these guys now, if it's looking out the window, it's not actually raining anymore. So if there are a couple of teams that have reacted to that early sprinkle of rain, then they're really going to get caught out. These guys still on the slick tyre, and you can see how hard they're working. Tandy now coming down the hill through turn 12 up to the left-hand of 13, and the cars are moving around, but as you can still see, there is still a dry line there.
So we've got the sunshine in the shot here, but looking out from our commentary position, we can see some very black clouds begin to come over the horizon. Marco Mappelli has now found his way up into second place. A great performance from Mappelli. Still pretty sure that Nick Tandy's out on slick tyres there, because as the track now once more begins to dry out, he's just upping the pace. He has a big switch into turn 15. He'll have felt that, but he's able to plant his right foot. He's actually got a good run here, and he's going to challenge for second place. Up over the crest he comes, and moving into third place now is Nick Tandy. So Tandy goes third, some bodywork still on the start finish straight. Then it's Pereira in fourth. Nicky Kadai is in fifth position. In the background, there's the Lamborghini, looks to fight back up the inside. They almost make contact. Tandy, though, holds them around the outside and maintains that third place. A super scrap between the Porsche and the Lamborghini, and it's bringing Nicky Kadai into the mix as well already. Tandy has to go defensive, and again, James, this is a challenge. If he's on slick tyres, he can't move offline to claim his defend his position. Yeah, he can't. It literally is like being on a railway track. You cannot move offline. The minute you go near the wet patches with a slick tyre, you just have zero grip. And just interestingly, looking at the timing screen in front of us, Peter Cox obviously has built up a huge gap, but he just lost about 3 seconds to Mappelli on the last lap. So I'm not sure whether he ran wide in the conditions, but we're still not sure what tyre he's on. But this really is going to, I think you're going to need a lot of luck today to get through this this race without having a mix-up with the tyre or the pit stop. And already we've completed 20% of the race. There's only 40 minutes left on the clock, and it's now the turn of Nicky Kadai to put the pressure onto Patrick Pereira. And what can Kadai do as the Lamborghini twitches, and Nicky Kadai in the Ferrari right on his tail? Then we've got Patrick Pilet next up in 6th position. Kadai, a very, very late addition to the entry list this weekend, but my goodness, he's given us some entertainment both yesterday and today. So he closes up behind the Lamborghini down the hill, and the TV camera doesn't do justice just how steep that drop is. And still Kadai in very hot pursuit into turn 13, and Kadai could be on for a run here along the start to finish straight. Instead, he's actually going to try into the hairpin on turn 14, looks to the outside, so the Ferrari then tries to switch back up the inside, but the Lamborghini does exactly what it needs to do, plants itself firmly into the road. So still Kadai can't find a way past. This is the fight for 4th and 5th position down through turn 15. Taking a big leap over the curbs is Nicky Kadai, and up over the crest as the lap times now really coming down. The track is drying out. We've got lap times now under 2 minutes, and Tandy, now he's clear in third, driving well away. He's going to try and reel in Marco Mappelli. So Pereira in 4th position from Nicky Kadai there in 5th, and in 6th place Patrick Pilet is now not too far back. Here he comes, the IMSA Racing Magnum Porsche, closing on Kadai, who's trying every which way to get past Lamborghini. He's got a good run here now. He looks to the inside into turn 4, shutting the door very firmly in his face though. Here's Pereira in the Lamborghini, so they come over the crest and down the hill in towards turn 5 of the hairpin. Again, you can think about overtaking there. They're going to get past Rafael Unzuragaza in the Mosler. Through goes 4th and 5th fifth places, and then Pilet able to secure the move on the exit of the hairpin. And here we've got the real challenge as well for Nicky Kadai, is that he's in a GTS car, the Lamborghini ahead of him, Super GT car on straight line pace. He just can't quite find a way through.
Yeah, that's right. There are the two different classes obviously running in this championship, and it's very difficult when that's the case, because you obviously want to battle with everyone that's around you, but you do have to keep your own championship in mind. And again, referring to the timing screens, we just saw the last lap Mapelli and Tandy actually taking a second out of the race leader, Cox.
Patrick Pilet moves up now into fifth position, so Nicky Kadai, as a result of all the action, shuffled down into sixth position. He remains second in the GTS class. It's Marco, in fact, third in the GTS class, because of course the race leader, Peter Cox, is the GTS car. Then it's Marco Mapelli, who is second in class, and then Nicky Kadai is in third. We haven't seen much of Peter Cox, but he is 6.4 seconds clear. But now, of course, as the track dries out, this is when Super GT cars will begin to reel in the GTS class Lamborghini Gallardo, as some of the slower cars from the Spanish GT Championship just being lapped by likes of Patrick Pilet. It's a very busy run down the start finish straight, and Tandy's got a run here on Mapelli, and Nick Tandy is going to challenge for second place. It's just to the back of your shot as they come down the hill. He can't quite squeeze through, and all the while though, the race leader, Peter Cox in the Lamborghini at the head of the shots, is being caught by the scrap in second place as Cox tries to put the lap on Federico Leo. Scything through the traffic, they go past the Antonio Noguera Porsche, which we saw spinning earlier on. So Mapelli and Tandy cleanly through another of the Porsches they've got to clear as they accelerate out to turn 4, down towards turn 5. This is going to be incredibly congested, and Tandy bobbing and weaving every which way to try and squeeze past Marco Mapelli. He can't quite do it under braking into the hairpin, but really, given the pace differential between these cars over a lap in dry conditions, it's a matter of time really before Tandy goes through. It
is, and you could see down into turn 1 and turn 5 he did exactly the same thing. He had the momentum, but he knew that if he went to the inside he wasn't going to be able to stop the car on the wet surface, on those slicks. So he's got to try and get another good run down the pit straight and try and make the move count before he gets to the wet braking area of turn 1.
Well, Marco Mapelli, absolutely no concerns about going past Federico Leo to put a lap on him there. Tandy able to do so, and actually gains a little bit of time. They then squeeze past the Good Sense Racing Lotus Evora, and that is Angela Negrao currently at the wheel of that one, already well clear of the Lotus, and still this fight for second and third continues. Now, what can Nick Tandy do? He's got 2 corners left on this lap, really needs a good run down out to the hairpin, which he may be helped by, because scything through the traffic is Mapelli, and Tandy able to get right into Mapelli's wheel tracks. He now needs a good run through turn 15 and then seal the deal well before.
And they're with the leader, and they're with the leader there. You can see as they come through the last corner, Cox has really been struggling. The gap last time round was 3.9 seconds, and it's not even a second now as he comes onto the pit straight. But that shows you with the traffic just how lucky you've got to be. You can sometimes catch the guy just at the right time, but you can see how much Cox has lost in the last couple of laps.
And Peter Cox thinks about putting that lap on Michael Broznicki. He can't quite do it, so first, second and third running line astern here with Nick Tandy in third place. He's in the sole Super GT car, so theoretically that is a bit quicker than the 2 GTS cars ahead of him, and Peter Cox has now got Marco Mapelli absolutely glued to his rear spoiler with Nick Tandy there. This is GT racing at its very, very best, and Tandy gets the run through turn 4 on over the crest and down towards turn 5. Is anybody going to be feeling bold on the brakes this time? Mapelli thinks about jinking to the inside of Peter Cox, realises that that is unlikely to end happily, so he remains in second place. Then they will look to get on the throttle nice and early to build that momentum up the crest out to turn 5. And if anything, it's really Mapelli who's taking the challenge to Peter Cox.
Yeah, it looks like Tandy's almost just sitting back and waiting to see what happens here. He's dropped back a couple of car lengths, but Mapelli looks really on it now. You can see that Cox is struggling with his tyres, so we're assuming at this point that Cox did start on the wet tyre, got the gap at the beginning when the circuit was at its wettest, and now has been caught by the slick runners. But it's, again, Cox knows that these guys are going to have to go offline to pass him, so as long as he puts his car in the right place, he probably will be able to stay in front of them for a few corners. But again, you can see how quick the Porsches now look.
Really is. When those wet tyres go off, it's like roller skating on ball bearings. There's absolutely no grip at all for you as Tandy looks to the inside of Mapelli, who retaliates by looking to the inside of Peter Cox, and he's going to go through. Marco Mapelli takes the lead of the race away from Peter Cox, with Nick Tandy in very hot pursuit around the outside, down through the turn 14 hairpin. So it's now the 2 Porsches leading, with Marco Mapelli in the Auto Orlando Sport Porsche just clear of Nick Tandy down through turn 15, and Peter Cox, I wonder at what point he'll peel into the pit lane to get those tyres changed, and Tandy's got the run here on Mapelli. So as they streak through, and this is to complete the 8th lap of the race, 34 minutes remaining, And the sky getting very dark here once more at Portimao, and Cox, as if he can stay in touch with the leaders, we could see another shower in the next few moments. Again, Tandy, no option but to follow in the wheel tracks behind Mapelli through turns 1 and 2 onto the head, and turn 3 already Mapelli going defensively from Nick Tandy, and therefore Tandy will look to wind up the car, get the power down nice and early through turn 4, which is what he does now. They climb out of turn 4 over the crest on towards turn 5, traffic ahead of them, so Tandy may want to make his move. This time he jinks to the inside, but he just can't quite prize the opening again. This is real experience from Nick Tandy. He knows he's quicker, but he knows if he goes offline, he just won't get that car stopped on those slicks.
Yeah, it's right. You can see here as the move for the lead on Cox, he ran a little bit wide. Mapelli and Tandy can see the difference between slick tyres here, especially just out of shot. You can see Tandy go round the outside of Cox into the penultimate corner. But these two guys, you can see as they're carving their way through traffic, Tandy's almost trying to pressure Mapelli into a mistake. And that will come as you're coming through the traffic, and you can see that some of the traffic doesn't always see, and they make contact there, and Tandy makes the move stick.
Brilliant move from Nick Tandy. He takes the lead away, and that was just the traffic not seeing him. It was the DriveX Porsche that couldn't quite see him. It's Miguel Amaral, the Portuguese aristocrat, who didn't see Mapelli coming, and Nick Tandy just able to pounce. He knew with the traffic that that sort of error would happen, and Tandy able to take full advantage. It means that Peter Cox is now bringing himself back onto the tail of Marco Mapelli. Now, has Mapelli sustained any damage here? It was the lightest of contacts. And Amaral, vastly experienced GT racer, he just maybe was caught out by the closing speed of some of these cars. Due to the undulations we saw yesterday, that the slower cars, they really cannot see these quicker cars coming, and it's very difficult to judge the closing speeds when they're in your mirrors one moment, out the next. None of this, though, any concern to Nick Tandy, yesterday's race winner, already setting up very well for today. However, let's not forget that the International GT Open has a pit stop penalty regulation, so the car that wins the previous race incurs a 15-second pit stop penalty for the next race. So Tandy will have to sit in the pit lane for an extra 15 seconds when he hands over to Marco Holzer. So what that means, James, is that Nick Tandy's just going to build a big advantage. Here we see the incident with Amaral turning across Mapelli. They did well, in fact, really, to avoid having an incident, and Nick Tandy saw the lane to the outside. Yeah, not bene for the Autolando Sport team. So somewhat frustrated, but they remain in the lead of the GTS class. We have got just over 30 minutes remaining. And now, as we're saying, James, the challenge for Nick Tandy is to build as much of a margin over field as he can.
Again, you can see he's caught the Spanish GT Moser there in traffic, and it's just a case of trying to read this traffic well. And I must admit, credit to Nick when he took the lead there, because he did, I guarantee he did not lift down through the dip of turn 9 and was able to be in the right place at the right time to take the lead. But the key now, as I'm looking at the sky out of the commentary box, you can't ever assume that it's going to rain again, so you've got to make the most of the tyres you've got. You've got to always be on the right tyre at the right time. You can see the advantage of being on doing exactly that. Now the gap has opened to Mapelli quite a bit, so that move has probably just upset Mapelli's rhythm a little bit.
Well, a fairly wretched weekend unfortunately continues for the ACL by Road Drive 4GT. Rui Lapa has his second accident in as many days, and so he is well clear of the circuit. Whether or not he rejoins remains to be seen. So yes, the pit stop penalty, it's the top 3 cars in each class. So the top 3 in the Super GTs and the top 3 in the GTS, they all incur pit stop penalties, 15, 10 and 5 seconds respectively. They carry over into the next race, and therefore this is why we are seeing these drivers pushing as hard as they can to build up as much of an advantage as they can. Actually, for Nick Tandy, he is 11.5 seconds clear from the car of Patrick Pilet, who is second in the Super GT class. Here is Patrick down into turn 1.
Yeah, but just looking at the timing screens again, Nick Tandy lapped 2 seconds quicker than Mapelli on that last lap, so he's really getting his head down. The track really is coming to these drivers as we see more pit action now.
Yeah, and that's because the pit window is open for the driver change, so the first change we'll see is Alexander Taukanitsa Jr. Well, in fact, it's not a drive change. They are making the tyre switch, so are we going to see them going back to slick tyres here? I think we are. So Alexander Taukanitsa Jr. not handing over to his dad just yet, and instead making the tyre change. Patrick Pilet there, he is 4th in the race overall, 2nd in class, as he is some 4 seconds lap quicker than Peter Cox at the moment, so he will be closing on Cox very shortly to take that 3rd place away from Cox in the white Lamborghini, just a little bit ahead of him on the road. But this is a driver change, I think, that we have here now, and yes, it is. It's Tony Villander who is taking over from Federico Leo. So Villander, Finnish driver. He's also competing in this year's GT1 World Championship, second in his class at Le Mans last year. And pretty much if there's a Ferrari car to be found racing in the GT competition somewhere, Tony Villander will normally be at the wheel of it. Vastly experienced and very, very quick driver. And he's got a lot of work to do because that car well down the order as a result of the early pit stops. And now with the pit window open, the changes are coming thick and fast. The ASM team, McLaren, is into the pits, and that'll be Antonio Coimbra, who takes over from Luis Silva. As a result of their pit stop, they are running down in 15th position at the start of the pit stops, as across the line flashes Pilet, and he has closed now to within 1.7 seconds to the tail of Peter Cox as we watch the pit stop for the McLaren. And James, the McLaren, a relatively new car for GT racing, and still a lot of development that needs to be done.
Absolutely, they've obviously developed the GT3 car over the last few years. It is fantastic. All the championships think it's fantastic. The McLaren, as a manufacturer, are now coming in. As we see contact at the top of the hill, can't quite see where it is.
Ramos.
And that was again 2 into 1, never goes. And in a corner like that, where everyone funnels into one apex, it really is hard to get through there. But you can see now that Pilet is closing on Cox. Cox still out on the wet tyre by the looks of it, lapping in the 1:52. Meanwhile, the leaders are lapping in the 1:48, so he's losing a huge amount of time.
Really is. So Patrick Pilet piling on the pressure. He and co-driver Ramon Narak yesterday were struggling slightly in qualifying. They've really got over that today. So into the pit lane now comes Miguel Ramos, who we saw in the spin. He will hand over to Rafael Gianmaria, and Gianmaria, very quick and experienced driver. So Ramos into the pit lane, and yes,
See the shrug of the shoulders there, not quite knowing what the contact was for. But this is really a key part of the race, Ben. With 25 minutes to go, again, we can never assume that the rain shower is going to come, so the circuit's only going to get quicker and quicker. So for these drivers getting in the pit stops now, you really are just being thrown into the unknown, really. It's obviously on a slick tyre. You've got the car is getting lighter with the fuel load coming down, but the conditions you won't have seen yet because you won't have driven to the grid and you won't have done any laps so far today. So it really is a case of just getting out there, finding what car you've got underneath you and trying to stay out of trouble for the first couple of laps as those tyres come up to temperature.
Well, Peter Cox continues on his way. Patrick Pilet in hot pursuit, and with the best win in the world, really, I think we'll expect to see the Lamborghini slipping down the order when Peter Cox does hand over, because unfortunately Nico Pronk, his co-driver, not quite as quick as Peter. So Peter, the former Honda British Touring Car Championship racer and Lamborghini Works driver for many seasons, continues in that third position. And although that car has been struggling for pace, I think it really underlines the quality of Peter Cox. He's able to keep it pretty much the head of the field, because Patrick Pilet, he's been in hot pursuit, but he's still not yet onto the tail of Peter Cox, who remains in third position. Into the pit lane comes the Avora, and Angela Legrand hands over to Geoffrey Didier, who hops into the cockpit. In fact, I think that may be, well, the caption is slightly different to what we saw from qualifying yesterday, so we'll confirm in due course. Who is at the wheel, is still struggling for grip, is Matteo Malucelli. That's a very quick driver pairing, and what we saw from the Aston Martin was that it was very stable out on the track through the corners. We've got the Audi R8 in the pits really coming alive, but we're waiting for our top runners to come in. So Nick Tandy's not pitched in, nor has Marco Mappelli, nor has Peter Cox, nor has Patrick Pilet, and nor has Nicky Kadai.
But again, Ben, as we see on the timing screens, Tandy lapping in the 48.2s. Well, meanwhile, Mappelli must have had a slow lap with traffic of a 50.5. So Tandy, I think, is just going to stay out there and try and get this gap as big as he can, so that when he has his 15-second penalty when he comes into the pit stop after winning yesterday's race, he doesn't come out too far back in the traffic.
Matteo Malucelli in the midst of this fight for 5th, 6th and 7th. So we've got Calai just ahead of Priera in the Lamborghini, and then Malucelli in hot pursuit. So despite those struggles at the end of the laps, he's still not slipped too far down the order. He will be due into the pit lane to hand over shortly to Alvaro Barber as the fight for third place now well and truly alive. Peter Cox coming under real pressure here from Patrick Pilet. Now what can Pilet do about picking his way past him?
He really does have to try and pick the right place, Ben, because as we know, he's on slicks. Peter Cox can kind of cruise all over the circuit and really pick his lines, but trying to get a move made now is key, because he cannot afford to have his momentum halt.
So Alvaro Barber will be clambering into the cockpit. There's Alvaro with his patriotic colour scheme on his helmet, clambering into the Portimao Racing Aston Martin. They've been really overjoyed, though, with their overall performance this weekend. Here is Patrick Pilet now. Has he got past Peter Cox? No, he remains in hot pursuit. So Pilet, who won 4 races in the International GT Open back in 2010, he raced in the Japanese Super GT Championship last year. Hugely experienced driver, but as is Peter Cox, and Cox is working a minor miracle with this Lamborghini at the moment.
But again, Ben, I'm looking at the times now. It's very difficult to judge. We don't know obviously what tyres these guys are on, but looking at the times, you'd actually have to say that Cox is actually on the same tyre as Tandy, because they're both lapping in the 48. The rain isn't falling, so maybe he is actually on slicks, but just went through that strange phase, and we're losing some pace to the guys around him.
Also, let's not forget, of course, that Cox is in the GTS car. The cars swarming around him are Super GT cars, so down through turn 15, the car just unsettled over the crest of the hill, and Patrick Pilet's now got the run on Peter Cox into the pit lane. Has come the race leader, Nick Tandy, and there is Tandy. It's Marco Holzer who will take over. Let's not forget, they have got to stay still for an extra 15 seconds in this pit stop.
No tyres either, Ben, in that stop.
Which would suggest that they started the race on slicks, wouldn't it? So pit stop continues. These two still yet to make the interchange, and beginning to come to the end of the pit stop window here. We've got just 22.5 minutes remaining in the race as Patrick Pilet continues to search for a way past the Lamborghini Gallardo of Peter Cox. Lights ablaze from both of them, really to warn the traffic up ahead. They're en route. Also into the pit lane, we've got Marco Mappelli, the GTS class leader. He will be handing over to Archie Hamilton. It's one of the Spanish GT cars, a little bit lower down the order, having its driver change. Back to the fight for 3rd and 4th position. And Cox has got immense corner speed. Pilet on the straights is going well, but Cox just seems to be so consistent. And that gap's actually gone out a little bit over the past lap. It's probably up to 1.5 seconds or so. Just trying to squeeze past the Ferrari 430. Down the hill, has the Ferrari seen Patrick Pilet in the Porsche? He has now. Through goes Pilet. He's lost a fair amount of time through that particular group of traffic.
Yeah, that just shows you that was only one car in one corner, and it shows you how much time you can lose in traffic. And you see all these pro drivers like Tandy and Peter Cox and Blanda, they're just able to judge it, and that saves you so much time, lap after lap over a race distance.
Marco Holzer out into the lead of the race. He's pretty much taken over in the same sort of position he handed over to Nick Tandy yesterday. And Holzer, plenty of work to do, as into the pit lane they descend en masse. So Peter Cox in to hand over to Nico Pronk, also Patrick Pilet over to Ramon Narak. And Narak, a very rapid driver as well. He was the LMS GTM champion last year, 2011, also competing in 2010 the International GT Open, winning the Dubai 24 Hours that season as well. One of the Ferraris from the AF Corsa squad, and that will be Henrik Harner taking over from Martin Lanting. Pulling on from that pit slot, looks like there'll be a tyre change for them. Now that answers the Peter Cox conundrum, doesn't it? Because with no tyre change, that would suggest that Cox started it on slick tyres, which makes his performance in the opening few laps of the race absolutely astonishing. Yeah,
that's very impressive. To start at the front on that damp track and open, I think he was up to 10 seconds at one point. It was very, very impressive. But we just saw there that Pilet and Cox both got caught up behind one of the red Ferraris coming into the pit lane, so they weren't able to attack the white line where the speed limit starts as hard as they would have liked. They could have lost a second or two there, but you can see Tandy now, Holzer now taking over from Tandy, coming through the last corner, and also Archie Hamilton now taking over from Mappelli. Is going to be key for him to show what he's made of now. This is really in at the deep end for him in his first proper season of full GT programs. This is going to be key for him to show what he's made of.
And Nico Pronk emerges into the lead of the race, and this is the beauty of these pit stop penalties, because Marco Holzer is there in effectively second place, but he's got Ramon Narak now right in his tail, and immediately into the lead of the race goes Marco Holzer. No surprise there, Nico Pronk considerably less experienced. And this is playing very, very nicely in the hands of Ramon Narak, because yesterday, after qualifying, we were saying we expected that that car to be further up on the grid than it was. And, well, they've obviously found the race pace. And now what can Holzer do about maintaining his advantage at the head of the field? And what can Ramon Narak do about closing in on Marco Holzer? It's going to be a duel between the Porsches. And again, this is something we were watching in testing on Friday, that the Porsche really had the traction through the slower corners, which is why we've seen the Ferraris having to make those pit stops to change the tyres to get the grip. The Porsche just being able to stay out there and let the track come to them.
Yeah, I think we've actually just seen Holzer take the lead and pull away, but you can see them side by side through the dip now. Narak really pushing, really experienced racer coming up the hill into turn 10 and 11. And again, a little bit of traffic. He's got to go wide, and has he gone too wide? No, he's able to cut back in front. But yeah, Holzer is already taken the lead, if my maths is right. But yeah, the Porsche is always very strong in these conditions. It's got fantastic traction, really good top-end speed, which again, for a circuit with a pit straight like this is key. But the Ferrari normally has a lot better balance in the high-speed corners, but again, as of yesterday, I'm really impressed how Tandy and Holzer are just able to keep their head down, do their own job, and you can see what it's able to achieve.
Well, the fastest man on circuit at the moment is the number 11 car, Philip Pater, but he's a lap down because of that pit stop we saw at the very start of the race from Michael Brzezinski peeling in. Here comes Archie Hamilton, who's an absolute flyer, and this is a fantastic performance from Archie Hamilton, who is bidding to become the first third-generation Le Mans winner, because his grandfather Duncan Hamilton was a winner at Le Mans back in the 1950s. Archie, who's raced in Formula Renault in the UK, also in the Porsche Carrera Cup, now moves into third position past Nico Pronk. Is he able to get the car turned in on time? Yes, he is, and that also moves them into the lead of the GTS class. So a very impressive performance from Archie Hamilton in the Auto Orlando Sport Porsche. One of the least flashy teams in the field, the Auto Orlando Sport squad, as we've got, unfortunately, stranded there, the Ombra Racing Ferrari. I suspect that's probably now Mario Cordoni at the wheel of that one. That is requiring a tow, so great shame for Mario. It's Alvaro Barber in the Aston Martin, who's currently in 5th position. Stefano Bizzarri is in 6th, and then Jose Texera in 7th in the Good Sense Racing. Lamborghini Gallardo. Juan Manuel Lopez is in 8th place in the Ferrari 458. He's taken over from Andrea Montermini, and those are the only cars really on the lead lap in any sort of contention.
And again, as you mentioned, Philip Pater there is lapping some 2.5 seconds quicker than anybody on circuit at the moment. And again, that just shows the vast experience that he has, especially in the 458 Ferrari. He's just able to jump straight in the car halfway through the race, read the conditions very well. And again, I know the track is drying very, very quickly, but he's able to just get straight on there. He's setting purple sectors everywhere. He's currently on a very quick lap through sector 1 on a 33.9 compared to a 34.9 of our race leader, sorry, 32.9 of our race leader, Marco Holzer.
But Marco Holzer it is who remains in the lead of the race and is building up a reasonably healthy advantage here of Ramon Narak, who crosses the line 8.7 seconds back. We watch Nico Pronk in the Lamborghini Gallardo, and this is going to be a real challenge here for Nico, because he could be on for a GTS podium if he's able to keep his head and keep his pace. The car to watch for right in the background, I think, is going to be Stefano Bizzarri, who is 7 seconds back. So as Pronk turns through, we watch for Bizzarri in the 56 Ferrari. There is Philip Pater in the red and black car turning through the shot as well. So we've got some very quick drivers out on track. It's going to be a case of how much ground can they make up in the final 15 minutes of the race. All the while Marco Holzer remains at the head of the field, and will just look to build up as much of an advantage as possible over those chasing him down. Last time he was 2 seconds faster than Narak, and that means that he is continuing to grow that buffer. He flashes his lights at Alexander Taukanitsa Sr. Letting the Belarusian driver based in Vienna know that he is wanting to come through. Taukanitsa not making it too easy for him just yet, so he has to follow him down the hill out of turn 11 through turn 12. Still he's bottled up behind the Ferrari. Still he remains behind the Ferrari, and now Holzer will be getting a little bit frustrated because the Super GT car of Taukanitsa, really over a single lap, is about as quick as the Porsche, and he's now getting the lights flashed all the time from Marco Holzer, and it's this difficulty getting through the traffic that could really turn the race on its head, because Holzer is going to lose several seconds on this lap.
Yeah, you can see it's going to be interesting to see now as we come up onto the pit straight what the straight line speed of that Porsche is like. You can see him tucking into the toe on the flash button on the steering wheel, flashing away at the Ferrari, and we look out the window as they whiz past us down into turn 1. He's got to try and make the move into turn 1, otherwise he's going to be probably behind him through 2, 3 and 4 as well. But just looking as well, Nico Pronk needs to maybe find 2 or 3 seconds of lap time now, because he's in a little gap of his own, but he's really in danger of being caught by Bizzarri. And again, the guys now in front dipping into the 47.5s, and Pronk needs to just try and keep his head down, do a few quali laps and try and bring those lap times down a little bit.
Marco Holzer did successfully negotiate Alexander Talkanitsa Senior. As here is Nico Pronk, and the gap between himself and Stefano Bizzarri is down to 1.4 seconds. So that's the battle that we will hopefully go to between the 76 car and the 56 car. This is the 6th place machine of Alvaro Barber, who is actually not really gaining on the battle in front of him. Stefano Bizzarri, the former Italian Formula 3 racer, absolutely flying. So here comes Alvaro Barber, raced in World Series by Renault against you, James, actually several years ago before making the switch to GT racing. And is this the change for second in the GTS class? I think it is. So Bizzarri goes through into 2nd place in the class, and he's brought that gap down in absolutely no time at all. So Stefano Bizzarri moves into 4th place in the race, 2nd in the GTS class. Nico Pronk remains 3rd in the GTS class. Now Daniel Zampieri is the man to watch for. Zampieri is currently in 9th place. He's 30 seconds back from Nico Pronk, but he's 6 seconds a lap quicker.
Yeah, you can see Pronk running wide through turn 7. I was just going to say he needs to try and stay on the tail of the Ferrari and just chase it and follow it really for the rest of the race, but he's being dropped reasonably quickly. It's all about just placing the car in the right place. You can see the dry patches and also the wet patches on the track. If you just put the car in the wrong place at the wrong time, you can lose a huge amount of time. And you can see the Ferrari's already pulled probably 3 or 4 seconds on Pronk, even in half a lap.
Stefano Bizzarri, he is 11 seconds back from Archie Hamilton, but he's now been released. What can he do about challenging for 3rd in the race overall and the GTS class victory? I fear that with just 12.5 minutes remaining, it's going to be a bit too much of a task for him, but it's not going to stop him trying. They got on the podium yesterday, Bizzarri and Calais, and they're looking to make it another podium finish. So up over the brow, and this will complete his 19th lap of the race. 1 minute 47.2. He's 12.8 seconds back from Archie Hamilton. He's flashing his lights to try and let the cars him know that he is really pushing as hard as he can to, well, A, build out his advantage as 2nd in class and 4th in the race overall, and B, just try and close in on Archie Hamilton up the road ahead of him.
But again, Ben, with the leaders consistently in the low 47s now, we've got Philip Petter on a 44.6. And that is incredible pace. I know he's further back in the field after the issues they've already had, but to be lapping that much quicker at this pace again shows how competitive the Ferrari package is at the moment, especially when it's been driven by someone with the experience of these conditions.
Well, Bizzarri and Hamilton lapping at pretty much identical pace at the moment. And if you are watching on the live web stream, you'll be able to pick up the live timing. And through sector 1, there was just 0.1 of a second between the pair of them. So Bizzarri, he can push as hard as he can, but really needs to be closing on to the tail of Archie Hamilton to the tune of about 2 seconds a lap at the moment. He's not quite in a position to do that. In the lead of the race remains Marco Holzer. His advantage over Ramon Narak is 10.4 seconds with an Archie Hamilton in 3rd. In fact, if anything, the gap between 2nd and 3rd is coming down, with then Bizzarri here in 4th position, maintaining that pressure. And Bizzarri was significantly quicker than Archie Hamilton on this lap through sector 2. It's been a real privilege to spend the whole lap watching Bizzarri at full chat around this wonderful undulating Portimao circuit, the Orlando Port Squad. On the radio, also Manthe Racing, I think it was, in fact, just letting Marco Holzer know he's in the lead of the race, keep things steady, and we've still got 20% of the race to go. Let's not forget there's an awful lot that can happen, and for Holzer, James, it's just a case of getting his head down, trying to keep the pace consistent and avoid any entanglements in the traffic. Yeah,
exactly. Sometimes when you let the pace off, it's easy to make a mistake. But again, we were a bit worried the last lap with Raymond Narak losing a second to Archie Hamilton, but it's actually the other way around now. So I'm guessing he'd probably hit a bit of traffic because on that last lap, Narak actually took 3/10 out of the race leader Holzer.
He did. The gap from 1st to 2nd, 10.2 seconds, which is exactly where the Manthe Racing squad would like it to be, and this would be a very rare feat in the National GT Open to win both races in the weekend, because with the pit stop penalties, we really very rarely see back-to-back winners. Here is the 2nd place car, Ramon Narak, and now he's got some clear air, able to lap very consistently. He is a little bit quicker than Marco Holzer, but he's not going quite quickly enough, I don't think, to chase down Holzer between now and the end of the race. That's an immaculately presented car, though, the IMSA Racing Matma Porsche. Very distinctive paint scheme and a very, very competitive proposition. Turning out of turn 14, now accelerating on towards turn 15. And we've got a drive-through penalty for Juan Manuel Lopez in car number 2 in the 31 car of Hugo Godinho, and that is for pit lane speeding, so neither of the front runners affected by that. And well, yesterday we saw so many cars getting various penalties. This time around we're not having any, and it is enabling us to have a very pure race through to the flag. Also looking out to the far side of the circuit, I don't think that we're going to come under too many concerns now as well for rain between now and the end of the race. Nico Pronk continues to slip down the order. I think he's now down into 8th because he's just up behind Juan Manuel Lopez. Lopez, of course, in that number 2 car, goes in now for his drive-through penalty, so it's a place regained for Nico Pronk, but he's going to have to keep his pace up, Pronk, because he has got not too far behind him the flying Daniel Zampieri in the number 9 car. So in 7th place we've got Nico Pronk. He is just behind Jose Texera in the Good Sense Lamborghini Gallardo. Here is the 3rd place car of Archie Hamilton, and Hamilton still 11 seconds clear of the 4th place car of Pizzari.
Yes, and just looking at the timing screens again, we can see now that Narak has taken about another second out of the lead. The lead now down to 9.4. But again, going back to Philip Petter's time of a 44.6, that would have put him 4th on the grid for this race. That just shows how good his race car is today.
It's just a shame, really, that the rain lottery unfortunately worked against them. Juan Manuel Lopez, drive-through penalty served, rejoins the action with Archie Hamilton looking to try and pick his way up through the order, and this has been a big step up this weekend for Archie, and he's really risen to the challenge very well. He sides, or attempts to side past the Ferrari, gets a little bit squeezed there by Jesus Diaz Villarreal, and eventually he goes around him. Lost a little bit of time that lap, but it's no concern to Archie. We're at the stage of the race, given his advantage, where really the key is to make sure he doesn't come into contact with anybody, to make sure he doesn't have a spin by being pushed offline, and he actually negotiated that very well. 3rd place in the race overall, leading the GTS class.
Yeah, you can see how aggressive he was having to be. You have to be very careful, obviously. In these short races, the traffic can cost you a huge amount of time, so you do have to be very assertive when you arrive at them. But there's also the flip side of the coin, that if you make contact at the wrong period in the corner, you can cause quite a lot of damage with these cars. So Archie has to be a little bit wary as he's making his way through these traffic. You can see quite a little chunk of rubber coming off his tyre there as he went through turn 3. These tyres seem to be holding up very well. We've heard from the organisers how pleased they are with the tyre that Dunlop have provided this year. It's very durable. They're not suffering any punctures, so they're really delighted. And it just shows how hard these drivers can push for the whole race distance.
I was chatting to Marco Mappelli, Archie Hamilton's co-driver, on Friday night, and he was so confident about the car's form this weekend. They really thought that they were looking good for a victory. It's turning into a very good weekend quarter round as the Manthe Racing squad just sitting on the pit wall, monitoring the progress of their man Marco Holzer in the lead of the race. Conversations on the radio, but really no huge concerns. Right, we have still got Nico Pronk circulating in 7th, but really struggling when he's being passed, or attempting to be passed, by the 58 car, which is actually just trying to unlap itself. Here is the race leader, meanwhile, Marco Holzer, and this is going to complete the 23rd lap of the race. Just 5.5 minutes remaining. Over the brow and over the start and finish line, Team Give holds the pit board. He blasts past it. It tells him that he's well over 10 seconds clearing the lead of the race, and that really is all he needs to know. And James, if you're in this position, do you want to be on the radio to team all the time, or would you rather just like to be left to your own devices just to run your pace?
Normally I like to know what the gaps are in front and behind me, but probably at this stage of the race it's probably fine for the guys to just give you that gap via a pit board rather than having to speak to you the whole time. Sometimes you can feel a little bit lonely if you don't get spoken to too often, but especially at night when we're racing these cars at night. But no, at this stage I'd be asking just for a pit board for the gap behind, and as we know, with only 4.5 minutes left, he's got a nearly 11-second gap, so hopefully if he can steer his way through the traffic, this is going to be another fantastic win for the team.
It's currently looking very good for them indeed. It's been a super start to the season for the Manthe Racing team. Marco Holzer and Nick Tandy, it's really been their principal programme for the 2012 season. They're taking it very, very seriously. It shows the esteem in which the International GT Open is held. As a spin for Amon Narak. Has he been able to get that fired up and back into the fray? Yes, he has. No loss of place, and slightly uncharacteristic spin there.
Yeah, that was very strange. You can see how hard he was braking over the bumps down into turn 5. Looks like he maybe just grabbed a rear brake, Maybe he's just got a little bit too much brake bias to the rear. You could see the rear coming round on him, and with all that weight of the rear of the car as you're going downhill, he managed to actually only do a half spin, select a gear and carry on, so he didn't lose too much time there.
Although it does help Marco Holzer, who now streaks through and into what will potentially be the penultimate lap of the race here, I think. So, for Holzer, as with Nick Tandy yesterday, this is looking very, very comfortable for the double victory. But now is the time when you're listening to every gear shift in the car, every little rattle and cluck, desperately hoping that something doesn't go wrong. And really the drivers that he cannot afford to relax, and well, he's just picking his way through the lines. Absolutely sublime drive from Holzer. Perfect racing line through turn 4, on towards the hairpin at turn 5. Slightly less sublime from some of the dicing Ferraris, but far behind, but they're having fun, which is really the most important thing after all, because all these drivers compete primarily because they enjoy it. Holzer lights the blaze. It's Alexander Taukanitsa who's just behind, having a very enjoyable tussle.
And you can see, Ben, how much time that cost Narak. Is now an 18.5-second gap between him and the leader.
Yeah, 1 minute 55 last time around. And it also means that Archie Hamilton is not too far adrift. And if that incident was caused by maybe the tyres going off in the Porsche, then Archie Hamilton could be in with a sniff here of claiming second position. It's been a great weekend for the Good Sense Racing Lamborghini Gallardos. Jose Teixeira, they're in 6th position in the 82 car. They really have put together a couple of very strong races. He's got a little bit of traffic to try and negotiate. The first of those will be Antonio Coimbra in the McLaren. Past Antonio he goes. Next up will be the Claudio Sudanwich, piloted AF Course Ferrari. And Claudio, a pretty quick driver, so unable to quite close onto his tail just yet is Jose Teixeira.
Again, we've seen from the timing screens, we haven't really mentioned them much after the woes of this morning, yesterday, sorry. But Tony Verlander as well, lapping very quickly in the high 45s now. We haven't seen much of him as we see a Ferrari stop to the side of the road there. But again, the Verlander car and the Petty car just showing how competitive the Ferrari 458 is.
Yeah, and that car going off the road with a considerable level of assistance, and I think that was Stefano Bizzarri who made contact, the car that's second in the GTS class, prompting that rotation for Jesus Diaz Villarreal. And so Bizzarri, yes, he was a 1 minute 50, only lost 2 seconds on that last lap, and that was a fairly hefty clout, and we'll see where the problems develop for the 56 Ferrari in these closing stages of the race. Marco Holzer, imperious at the head of the field. It's been the perfect weekend for Nick Tandy, and we are on course here for a Porsche lockout in the overall race podium, because it is the Holzer Manthey Racing Porsche that leads it. It's the IMSA Performance Malmö Porsche in second place, and Archie Hamilton for Autolando Sport in third position, leading the GTS class. And we thought the Porsches looked good in testing for overall honours, and so it has proved to be. Ramon Narak has responded to his spin by putting in his best lap of the race to extend his advantage over Archie Hamilton out by over a couple of seconds. Now, are we going to squeeze an extra lap out of this one? Because we've got 20-odd seconds left on the clock as Marco Holzer heads down through turn 15, so I think we are going to be heading on to the last lap of the race now. Just looking to see where the checkered flag is ready. It's not yet, so we now head into the final lap of the race. We're going to have a 27-lapper here, which is a formidable pace, given it's only been a 50-minute race. And Marco Holzer, imagine when he watches the video of this race back later, will be a little bit frustrated that he's had to do an extra lap here. It's always, when you cross the line with just a couple of seconds remaining, what you'd really like is the checker flag to come out, because an extra lap, it looks very easy watching the car from the outside, but the inside there's all manner of things that can go wrong. He's still going to push on at a fairly intensive pace, as again Ferrari skittles out wide.
And Ben, you can see there how much water is still being held in the AstroTurf on the curve outside of turn 4. But yeah, you say just crossed the line with 2 seconds to go. It's quite a dangerous game to play, trying to judge when the checkered flag's going to come out. But no, I think they should be so happy what they've done this weekend. You know, the ultimate pace wasn't quite there in qualifying, but the race pace of this car has been fantastically strong. And And as I said yesterday, I had my money on the two of them for yesterday's race. I think today they've just showed what a strong driver pairing they are.
Really have done another very strong driver pairing. Marco Mappelli and Archie Hamilton, they are well set to take an emphatic victory in the GTS class, helped slightly by Stefano Bizzarri having that incident we saw a few moments ago. Marco holds it out, just a couple of corners to go between himself and making it a 100% record in this year's International GT Open Championship. He heads down through the hairpin at turn 14. With just turn 15 to come. I don't think he's going to attempt to lap the traffic ahead of him unless they really slow him up. Instead, he just strokes the car into the final turn. The checkered flag is ready and waiting. The Manthe squad on the pit wall, ready to cheer their man home. Accelerating on up over the crest. The checkered flag goes out, and the win in round 2 of the 2012 International GT Open goes to Marco Holzer and Nick Tandy, winning both races at Portimao this weekend. A super performance from the pair of them. And the celebrations, I imagine, will continue long into the night. Ramon Narak and Patrick Pillet claiming second position, with then Archie Hamilton and Marco Mappelli a very, very fine third in the race overall, and also winning the GTS class as well. The Auto Orlando Sport team cheering him across the line, and it shows just what a friendly paddock we've got here in the International GT Open. All of the mechanics on the pit wall cheering every car across the line, and that is what makes this such a popular championship with the drivers, the teams and the spectators. It's been a super performance from Jose Teixeira and Patrick Piera in the Lamborghini Gallardo, and they cross the line. They are the first of the Spanish GT entered cars this weekend, and they have claimed an excellent victory in that, together with a very fine 6th place in the race overall. Well, Stefano Bizzarri did eventually cross the line in 2nd position, so Bizzarri and Nicky Cadai second in the GTS class, and then Nico Pronk held on for 3rd in the GTS class in Lamborghini Gallardo, and he and Peter Cox will therefore be up on the podium. Really a fine performance from Peter Cox, and then Pronk doing what he needed to do, keeping the car at a good pace, not letting those around him close onto his tail. As the Team Nova driver, Audi R8, Carlos Vieira, crosses the line a little bit lower down the order, and he rounds out the top 10 with that performance. So Carlos Vieira, an excellent 10th position, the Nova driver squad. Hang out over the pit wall as Manthe Racing, handshakes all around, and really job done for them this weekend. They qualified well, they did exactly what they needed to do in the race. Yesterday's win came under slightly tricky circumstances. Today they have done absolutely everything right, and Marco Holzer, Nick Tandy will be leaving Portimao as the emphatic leaders of the International GT Open for 2012. The International GT Open reconvenes in 4 weeks' time at the Nürburgring, and you'll be able to watch both races live on the GT Open website, live.gtopen.net, in 4 weeks' time. James and myself will be there in the Nürburgring to guide you through the action. Now, will the Porsches be able to maintain this winning record on home territory? But for now, it is Holzer and Tandy who've won the 2nd race of the weekend here at Portimao, from Narak and Pillet, with their Marco Mappelli and Archie Hamilton an excellent 3rd, winning the GTS class from Stefano Bizzarri, and Nicky Cadai 4th, 2nd in the GTS class. Alvaro Barber and Malucelli, super for the Villar Racing Aston Martin. They have got 3rd in the Super GTs. We rather missed that, a performance by stealth, but they have done superbly well to take 5th and also get onto the Super GT class podium as well. So I think they will very much consider the weekend's work done. Tony Velander and Federico Leo eventually, despite their trials and tribulations, crossed the line in 18th, but again, it's been a trying weekend for them, finishing some 2 laps down. Despite the late race pace that we saw from Tony Villander, it seems a very, very long time ago that he put that car on pole position for the first race yesterday morning and led into the distance. Again, despite the tricky conditions, very, very few casualties over the course of the race, with 32 cars making it to the checkered flag. Into Parc Ferme comes Marco Holzer. Nick Tandy gives him a hug. They thoroughly enjoyed that, and really, James, you can't ask for much more from a weekend than that, as we have a check of the Drivers' Championship and comfortably clear Marco Holzer and Nick Tandy from Nicky Cadai and Stefano Bizzarri. 2 very consistent races for them, so they are equal in 3rd and 4th position. Patrick Pillet, Ramon Narak Despite the dramas in qualifying, they leave here 5th and 6th in the championship, just a point clear of Archie Hamilton and Marco Mappelli, with then Matteo Malucelli and Alvaro Barber, Portimao Racing's Aston Martin. A very, very fine weekend's work for them. So the debriefs underway in Parc Ferme. As we were saying, Mark Holzer and Nick Tandy, job done, 2 wins.
Yeah, they couldn't have asked for better, really. You could see how happy they were yesterday, and it was almost a mirror image today. So they'll be very happy. You can see Pile and Holt and Narak there discussing the race. They'll be happy with 2nd place. And again, fantastic job by Archie Hamilton, bringing the car home in 3rd place for a great class win and 3rd overall.
Absolutely, for Archie Hamilton, it's a real big step up to international GT racing this year, and he's quitted himself exceptionally, celebrating there on winners of the Spanish GT, the Good Sense Racing Lamborghini Gallardo, as we have another chance to enjoy the highlights from what was a thrilling race. It was Matteo Malucelli who led them into turn 1, but Peter Cox, by the time they reached turn 2, had found the lead on what was a track which was very, very damp offline. We had adventures in the early stages, a couple of spinners along the way. Everybody keeping themselves out of the Armco. The story of the race began to emerge as some drivers got up to pace on their slick tires quicker than others. Peter Cox sprinted to an early 10-second advantage, but therefore took the best out of his Dunlops and found himself being reeled in as the racing continued. Behind, we really did enjoy some fantastic dicing early on in the race. Alvaro Barber took over from Matteo Malucelli, the pole sitter, mid-race, as Nick Tandy trying to prize his way through to lead. That was the change for lead when Peter Cox got demoted by Marco Mappelli. Went all wrong for Miguel Ramos as Cox peeled in, turned over to Nico Pronk. Then the race really began to tip back in favour of the Porsches. Pronk then passed by the hard-charging Stefano Bizzarri to slip down into 3rd in the GTS class. Ramon Narak, 2nd in the race in hot pursuit of Marco Holzer, had the spin. Bizzarri charging through the field, had some adventures along the way, but he still did enough to finish in 4th overall. But it was Marco Holzer and Nick Tandy who put together a dominant performance and an excellent victory to win 2 from 2 here in Portimao, with a very, very fine 3rd in the race and winning the GTS class from Archie Hamilton and Marco Mappelli, with then the Lamborghini Gallardo of Patrick Pereira and Jose Texera claiming Spanish GT honours and 6th in the race overall. Drivers now on to the podium. So first of all, we've got the podium for the top 3 in the race overall, which is why I've got Archie Hamilton and Marco Mappelli there. Into 2nd place for the podium, Patrick Pile and Ramon Narak. And then our double race winners about to come onto the podium, Marco Holzer and Nick Tandy. Super performance from them throughout the weekend, and they deserve the handshakes and the trophies on the podium. And Manthe Racing claiming the double, of course, in the teams competition. German national anthem in honour of Manthe Racing, the winning team. And now we will have the trophies presented to our podium finishers and the winning team. So do join us in a few weeks' time, the 26th and 27th of May at the Nürburgring in Germany. We will be on live.gtopen.net, live streaming both races. And then if you are watching this race delayed, then of course it will be on a couple of hours after the event. So the handshakes all around on the podium. Some very happy drivers, and with very good reason. The nice big trophies for the race winners, Nick Tandy and Marco Holzer. They hoist them aloft to the cheers of the mechanics down in the pit lane. Job done this weekend, and Manthey Racing taking the team victory. Now that the hard work has been done, after they've posed for the photos, it will be the second race of the day, which is who can get the cork off the champagne the fastest. And it's looking like Archie Hamilton's won that race. He soaks Nick Tandy on the podium. Tandy still struggling to get the cork off, and Marco Holzer getting drenched as well. Drivers thoroughly enjoyed that, I think. And why not? Some excellent racing for us. It's more the chance to enjoy some fantastic slow motion shots of these spectacular cars out on the undulations of the Autodromo do Algarve here in Portugal. Of course, when we go to Nürburgring, that's another circuit with plenty of elevation changes and another very distinct challenge for the drivers.
Peter Cox there, Ben, you can see discussing the race, but again, talking about the experience of Narak, I don't think I've ever seen anyone run off the podium so quick, not wanting to get wet with champagne.
It's very true, as we now move into the podium for the GTS class. So first of all, Nico Pronk and Peter Cox, an excellent third place. Peter Cox doing a lot of the hard work in these stages, but Nico Pronk, after spinning out of yesterday's race on the very first lap, doing very well to hold on to third. Into second place in the class, Stefano Bizzari and Nicky Kadai. It's been an excellent weekend's work for them, because they won the class yesterday, they were second today, and a third and the fourth in the race overall. And then back onto the podium, our GTS class winners, Marco Mapelli and Archie Hamilton. And then Auto Orlando Sport, the winning team as well in the GTS class. No national anthems this time around. Instead, it's straight into the trophies. So first of all, the trophies for third place. Stefano Bizzari and Nicky Kadai getting their rewards for second position. And then what's going to be a very full trophy cabinet tomorrow morning in the Auto Orlando Sport garage. The first place trophy in the GTS class for Marco Mapelli and Archie Hamilton. Again, to the cheers, the mechanics down the pit lane, with Auto Orlando Sport also claiming the Team Victors Cup. Straight into the champagne, and Auto Orlando Sport, they're used to winning. The representative from the team off the podium quicker than the car got away from the start line, and again, celebrations on the podium. Peter Cox showing his experience. He soaks Nico Pronk, pouring the champagne down the back of his neck, which I think, James, is probably one of the advantages of years and years of racing. You know how to be quick from the draw on the podium with the champagne. Hard charging drive, wasn't it, from Bizzari in the second phase of the race. And this really, for these drivers, James, is the challenge as well, between having to be consistent but then having to turn it on when you really need to. Exactly,
and that's why we see, you know, people like Holzer, Narak, Vilander, Petter consistently being quick and being able to achieve these results. They know how to manage the tyre, they know how to work the car over well, this is a relatively short race for these cars. Obviously, we race them in 6-hour races and 24-hour races at Le Mans. But over what's effectively a sprint race, you've still got to manage those tyres and get the most out of them every corner of every lap.
You really do. So we've now got the podium for the Spanish GT Championship which is the celebration currently on the podium. And it really has been an excellent weekend from the Good Sense Racing team. But now we say goodbye from Portimao, and we look forward to joining myself, Ben Evans, and James Walker at the Nürburgring in a few weeks' time.
Congratulations, third place, Mr. Portimao here to the third place. Giacomo Bicchini, Ferdinando second place. Mr. Daniel Tiro, Executive Director of our Promotion Bureau. The Portuguese driver Manuel Tião Carlos Vieira. And to give a Caribbean team, the car number 82, Dr. Antonio Giacotta, executive member of the board, AFC Capital, Patriconia, Mr. Ramos, and Multis, racing team. Champagne, congratulations. And now, y ahora, llegamos de IFC, the winner, Rafael Udurrugaga. Dr. Antonio Giacotta, executive member of the board of ACC Capital. Compare time, compare display. And now, call the leader line, the car number 92, Luis Villalba, Antonio Gutierrez. Dr. Antonio Giacotta, the trophy to this car number 92.